The night was silent. The alien world was quiet, and the human traveler walked carefully through the rough land. He had been walking for many days, and his water was almost gone. His food was almost finished, and his hope was starting to break. But he kept moving because giving up was not an option for him. Above him, the sky was full of strange stars, bigger and brighter than the stars he had seen on Earth. The air was heavy, and the wind carried a strange smell, sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter. He pulled his jacket tighter and looked for shelter. He needed a place to rest, a place to hide from the cold night. Then he saw it, a dark opening in the side of the mountain. It looked like a cave. At first, he thought it was empty, just a safe place to sit down. But as he stepped closer, he felt something. It was not the cold air, not the silence of the night. It was the strange feeling of being watched. His heart beat faster. He stopped, and he listened. The wind whispered through the rocks, but behind that whisper, there was another sound. A faint cry, soft, weak, almost like the cry of a child. The human froze. His hands tightened around the small light he carried. He thought maybe he was imagining it. Maybe it was just the wind playing tricks. But then the sound came again. Clearer this time, sad and painful. Definitely not the wind. He stepped into the cave slowly, his boots crunching on the stones. The light revealed the walls sharp and rough, but he saw something strange. There were marks scratched into the stone, lines and circles, maybe writing, maybe just drawings. He walked further in, and then he noticed more signs. Half-eaten alien fruits lay on the ground, and next to them were small toys made of sticks and cloth. They were not human toys, but they were toys made by someone, maybe for children. His breath caught in his chest, his eyes narrowed. Someone was living here, someone who had children. But why were they hiding in such a dark, cold cave, far away from everything? Then the cry came again, this time followed by a whisper. A voice, broken, tired, whispering words he could not understand. The human raised his light higher, his voice low as he said, "Hello, is someone there?" From the deep shadows, two glowing eyes opened. The human froze in place, his heart pounding so loud he could hear it in his ears. The eyes blinked, and then a figure stepped forward. It was tall but thin, weak and trembling, its skin pale with a strange silver glow. It was not a monster, it was not a soldier, it was a woman. An alien woman. Her face was filled with fear and sadness, but also with hope. In her arms she carried something small. Two children, weak and hungry. They're tiny, hands holding onto her. The human could not speak. He was too shocked. The alien mother looked at him with tears in her eyes. She took a slow step forward, her voice shaking, her words rough but clear. "Please, do not hurt us. We are only hiding. We have nowhere else to go." The children whimpered, hiding their faces against her chest. The human lowered his light, his voice calm. "I will not hurt you." But inside his mind, questions screamed. Why? Was she here? Why were her children starving, and who had left her like this? The alien mother fell to her knees, her body shaking with weakness. She looked up at the human, her eyes begging, her lips trembling as she whispered, "We are abandoned. We are hunted, please. Help us, stranger." The human stood frozen, his thoughts spinning. This was no ordinary meeting, this was something different, something dangerous. And yet, looking at her, looking at the children, he felt something deep inside. A pull. A voice, whispering that walking away would mean their death. The cave grew colder. The cries of the children echoed in the silence. The human realized his journey had changed. He was no longer just a traveler searching for shelter. He had stepped into someone else's story, and this story was only just beginning. The human stood frozen in the cave, his small light shaking in his hand. Before him stood the alien woman, her thin body trembling, her skin pale and glowing. Faintly in the dim light, her eyes were large, filled with both fear and sadness, but also with something else. Something deeper. Desperation. She held her children close to her chest, two small figures clinging tightly to her arms. Their eyes were dull with hunger, their breaths weak, And yet, when they saw the human, they did not cry out in fear. Instead, they simply looked at him with tired, empty eyes, as if too weak even to scream. The human lowered his torch a little, his heart softening against his own will. He expected monsters. He expected danger. But what he saw was a family broken and lost. He spoke carefully, his voice steady though his mind was racing. "I will not hurt you," he said. "I am only passing through." The alien mother's lips trembled, her voice cracking as she tried to form words in the human language. Her speech was broken, heavy with an accent but clear enough to understand. "We, no home, no clan, no food," she whispered. "We hide, or they kill." The human's brow furrowed, his thoughts spinning. Who were they? Why would anyone abandon a mother and her children in such a place? He stepped closer, but she flinched back quickly, her arms tightening around the little ones. Her fear was sharp, yet her eyes never left his, as though she wanted to believe him but could not risk it. Slowly, carefully, the human set his pack on the ground. He opened it, pulling out the last of his food, a small piece of dried bread and a bit of water. He placed it on a flat rock near the mother, then stepped back, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. For a long moment she stared at the food, her throat moving as she swallowed hard. The children whimpered, reaching weakly, but she hesitated, her fear stronger than her hunger. Finally, she lowered her head, whispering words too soft for him to understand. Then she handed the bread to the smallest child, who bit into it with shaking hands. The human felt something stir inside him, a strange warmth mixed with anger. What kind of people would abandon their own kind like this? The alien mother's eyes glistened with tears as she let her children drink from his water flask. For the first time, their small bodies seemed to relax, even if only for a moment. When they were finished, the woman looked at him again. This time, her fear was softer, her voice was steadier, though still broken. "You, human," she whispered. "Why help us?" The human hesitated, unsure how to answer. Finally, he said, "Because you needed it." Her lips trembled again, her hands shaking as she clutched her children close. Tears ran down her cheeks. And then in a voice filled with pain, she spoke the words that froze him in place. "Be husband. Be father," she whispered. "My children need your strength." The cave grew still, the words hanging heavy in the cold air. The human's breath caught, his heart slamming in his chest. He stared at her, not sure if he had heard correctly. "We what?" he asked, his voice low. But her eyes did not waver. She looked at him with a mixture of shame and desperate hope. "My clan gone. My mate dead. No one," she whispered. "Children need father. I need husband. Or we die." The human took a step back, his mind spinning. In disbelief, he had expected fear, maybe even anger. But not this. She was not asking for food, she was not begging for protection for one night. She was asking for something much greater, something deeper. For her, this was not just about survival. It was about family. It was about giving her children a future, even if it meant turning to a stranger. Her voice broke as she spoke again, her tears shining in the dim torchlight. "I beg, human man, please." The human looked at the children, their small hands clutching her torn clothing, their weak eyes staring at him. He felt something heavy in his chest, something he could not explain. He had always been a wanderer, always alone, but now in this cave, 3 lives hung by a thread, and somehow fate had placed him in the middle of it. He did not answer right away. His thoughts were too heavy, his heart too conflicted. Was it madness to even think about such a thing, or was it destiny calling him to be more than just a traveler? The cave was silent except for the soft breathing of the children. The alien mother kept her eyes on him, her body shaking, but her voice steady with final words. "Without you, we die." The human stood there, torn between fear and compassion. He had come seeking only shelter, but instead he had found something much greater. And in that moment, he realized his journey was no longer his own. It was now tied to them, the abandoned mother, the fragile children, and the plea that could change his life forever. The cave was silent. Only the sound of the children's soft breaths filled the air. The human stood frozen, his mind heavy with the alien woman's desperate words. She had begged him to stay, begged him to become husband and father, and the weight of that request pressed on him like a mountain. He stared at her trembling form, her thin body trying to shield the children from a world that had already broken her. Her eyes glistened with hope and fear, a strange mix that pulled at something deep inside him. He had traveled far across this alien world. He had faced storms, hunger, and loneliness, but never had he faced something like this. For a moment his thoughts screamed to him, "Walk away." He told himself this was not his problem. He was only a wanderer. He had no reason to stay, no reason to take on a burden that was not his. He could turn now, step out of the cave, and disappear into the night, leaving her and the children behind. But then his eyes fell on the little ones, their faces pale, their small hands clutching their mother's clothing, their breaths weak and shallow. They were so fragile, so close to fading, and yet when they looked at him, it was not with fear, it was with hope, a hope so quiet yet so powerful it burned in his chest. The human closed his eyes, trying to steady his heart. He remembered his life before this strange journey, the empty nights, the silence of having no one. He had always told himself he was strong because he walked alone. But now he wondered if that strength was only a mask for his loneliness. The alien mother's voice broke his thoughts, soft and trembling. "My clan left me," she whispered. "They said I was weak. I loved peace, they loved war, so they cast me away." Her words were simple, broken, but every word carried pain like fire. She looked down at her children, brushing their thin hair with shaking fingers. "My mate. Gone," she continued, her voice almost breaking. "He left us when he knew we had no place. He chose his clan, not us." Tears ran down her pale cheeks, but she did not hide them. She let them fall, her shame open before him. The human's chest tightened, anger rising inside him. He had seen cruelty before, but to abandon a mother and children, to leave them to starve in the dark, it was something that twisted his stomach and made his hands clench. The alien woman raised her head, her eyes locking with his. "Human man," she whispered, "you strong. You fight, you protect. We need you." Her voice was not commanding, it was pleading, not the voice of someone seeking power, but of someone desperate for survival. The human turned away, pacing to the mouth of the cave. The cold wind bit at his face, the stars shining above seemed to mock him. He asked himself again and again, why me? Why now? He was no hero, no savior, just a traveler trying to survive. Yet the cave behind him pulled at his heart like a chain. Every time he thought of leaving, the image of the children's weak eyes and the mother's trembling voice pulled him back. It was not duty. It was not honor. It was something else, something deeper. He remembered his own family long ago, faces he had lost, voices he would never hear again. He remembered the pain of being alone, the silence that had haunted him, and now here was a chance, strange and sudden, to give meaning to his steps, to give life to his empty journey. The human turned back, his eyes meeting the alien mother's again. He still did not speak, but his silence was heavy, filled with the storm of his thoughts. The children reached out weakly, one of them whispering something in their alien tongue, words he could not understand but could feel. The mother's tears fell faster. She pressed her forehead to the ground before him. "I beg, please," she whispered. "We cannot live without you. We cannot survive." The human knelt down slowly, lifting her face gently with his hand. Her skin was cold, trembling, her eyes wide and wet. "I am not your kind," he said softly. "I do not belong here." But even as he said it, his own voice shook with doubt. Her reply came quickly, sharp with desperate truth. "You belong where heart is," she whispered, "and my children need your heart." The human felt his chest tighten again, his throat dry. He had faced beasts, hunger, and storms. But this was the hardest battle of all, the battle against his own fear. To stay meant danger, suffering, maybe even death. But to walk away meant abandoning them, leaving their small lights to fade into the dark. The cave seemed to wait for his answer, the air still, the stars outside watching. The children huddled closer to their mother, but their eyes never left him. The human realized then that no matter what choice he made, his life would never be the same again. And as the cold wind howled outside, he whispered to himself words only he could hear. This is no longer just my journey. The night grew colder. The wind outside howled like a beast, but inside the cave there was a fragile silence. The human sat near the entrance, his torch stuck into the ground, the faint firelight pushing back the darkness. Behind him, the alien mother sat with her. Children pressed close against her, their small bodies wrapped in her thin arms. For a long time none of them spoke, the weight of her desperate plea still heavy in the air. The human stared at the fire, his mind tangled in thoughts, his heart pulled in two directions. He had not promised her anything, he had not agreed to be husband or father, but he had not walked away either, and in his silence, a choice was already being made. He reached into his pack and pulled out the last bits of food he had kept for himself, some dried meat, a little bread, and a few berries he had gathered on the road. It was not much, hardly enough for one person, but he broke it carefully and placed it in front of them. The children's eyes lit up faintly, their hands reaching out, but they looked to their mother first. She hesitated, her pride and her fear still fighting inside her, but the hunger of her children was stronger. With trembling fingers, she divided the food between them, pressing the pieces into their small hands. They ate slowly, each bite like a gift, each swallow like a battle against the emptiness inside. The human watched, his chest tight. He had eaten alone for many nights, never caring if there would be enough for tomorrow. But watching these small lives cling to every bite of his food felt different. It felt heavier. It felt like the beginning of something he could not name. The mother lifted her head, her voice soft, broken, but carrying a strange warmth. You share, even though you need, she whispered. Why? The human looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. Because they need it more than me, he answered simply. Her lips trembled, her eyes wet again, but this time her tears were not only from pain. She whispered words in her own language, words the human could not understand. But from the way her children smiled faintly, he knew the words were gentle, words of comfort. The night dragged on, the cave breathing with the sound of wind and distant animal cries. The human knew danger still lurked outside, and he did not trust the shadows beyond the firelight. So he stood guard, his hand resting on a sharp stone he had shaped into a weapon, his ears listening for every sound. Behind him, the mother hummed softly, a broken song, a lullaby for her children. Her voice was weak, cracked, but the children closed their eyes and leaned against her, their tiny breaths slowing. The human felt the sound seep into his heart, a sound of love even in the darkest place. Hours passed, and the cold deepened. The human pulled off his heavy cloak and tossed it toward her. She looked at him in shock, as though such kindness was something alien to her. But when she wrapped it around her children, she gave him a look that carried more thanks than words ever could. For the first time that night, the human saw her smile, small and faint, but real. It was the kind of smile that spoke of gratitude, the kind that carried hope even in suffering. And something inside him shifted, a quiet flame burning brighter. When the fire began to fade, the human added more wood, keeping the cave warm. The mother watched him silently, her eyes soft. Her fear slowly melting into trust, she whispered again, her voice barely louder than the crackling flames. You different, not like others, not like my clan. The human did not answer. He only stared into the fire, but in his chest, he felt the truth of her words. He was different, because he had chosen to stay, even if only for one night, even if only for this moment he had chosen to stand with them. The children stirred in their sleep, one of them whispering a soft sound, a word in their alien tongue. The human did not know its meaning, but the way the mother's eyes widened told him it was important. She touched her child's face, her lips shaking as she translated in broken human speech. "They call you father?" The human froze, his heart heavy, his throat dry. He had not earned such a name. He had not agreed to such a bond, yet it was spoken, not by the mother, not by force, but by the innocent lips of a child. He turned his gaze back, to the fire, but his chest burned with emotions he could not hide. Outside, the wind screamed. The world remained cold and cruel. But inside the cave, for the first time in a long time, warmth began to grow. The human knew this was only the beginning. He knew the dangers had not ended. And as the night stretched on, he tightened his grip on the stone weapon in his hand, because somewhere beyond the darkness of the cave, heavy footsteps echoed faintly. Something was moving closer, something hunting. The cave was quiet, but the silence felt heavy. Too heavy. The human sat near the entrance, his hand tight on the stone weapon, his eyes watching the dark. The firelight flickered against the walls, but the shadows seemed alive, moving like unseen creatures. Behind him, the alien mother held her children close, her arms wrapped around them. They slept restlessly, their breaths uneven, their small bodies shivering even under the cloak. She looked at the human, her eyes full of silent fear, as though she knew what was coming. Then it came. The sound. A low growl, deep and rumbling, rolling in from the darkness outside. The human's breath slowed. His muscles tightened. He leaned forward. "Ready?" The mother gasped softly, covering her children's ears, her eyes wide with terror. The sound grew louder, closer, heavy steps crushing the ground outside the cave. A shadow passed across the firelight, massive and twisted, the shape of something not human. The smell of rotten meat filled the air, sharp and sickening. The human gripped the torch, pulling it free from the ground, the flame flaring bright. From the mouth of the cave, the beast appeared. Its body was covered in dark scales, its mouth wide with rows of jagged teeth, its glowing eyes locked on the human. It was hungry. It was hunting, and it had found prey. The human stepped forward, his torch raised high. The beast hissed, the sound echoing like broken metal, its claws scraping the stone floor. The children stirred in fear, one of them letting out a small cry. The sound made the beast roar, a sound so loud the cave walls shook. The human knew he could not run. If he left, the mother and children would be torn apart, so he stood his ground, fire in one hand, stone weapon in the other. His heart pounded, but his legs did not move, his body stood firm. The beast lunged, its jaws snapping shut where he had stood a second earlier. The human rolled to the side, swinging the torch into its face. Flames licked against its scales, the creature screeched, shaking its head violently. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, but the beast was far from defeated. It swung its tail, smashing against the wall. Stones fell, the ground trembled. The human staggered but did not fall. He rushed forward, slamming the sharp stone into its side. The weapon cut through the thin flesh between its scales. Blood dark and steaming spilled out. The beast roared again, snapping at him with teeth that could crush bone. The alien mother cried out, holding her children tighter. Her voice trembled as she shouted in her own tongue, words filled with fear and prayer. But the human did not stop. He kept fighting, each move fueled not by strength alone but by something deeper. The thought of the children, the thought of the mother, their lives hanging on his actions. The beast charged again, slamming its body against him. He hit the ground hard, pain shooting through his chest, his breath leaving him in a gasp. The torch rolled away, the flame sputtering dangerously, almost going out. The beast loomed over him, its jaws opening wide, its teeth dripping with saliva. In that moment, the human grabbed a broken piece of stone and shoved it deep into the creature's mouth. The beast thrashed, its jaws snapping shut on the stone, cracking it, blood pouring from its gums. The human scrambled to his feet, snatched up the torch, and thrust it into the beast's face once more. The fire caught, burning across its eye. The monster screeched. Stumbling back toward the mouth of the cave, the human pressed forward, shouting with all his strength. His voice echoed through the cave, his fire driving the creature back. For a moment, it looked as if he had won, as if the beast would retreat. into the night. But then the ground trembled again, heavier this time, stronger. The mother gasped, pulling her children deeper into the shadows. Her eyes wide with horror. The human turned toward the cave mouth, his chest heaving, his torch still burning, and there, stepping from the dark, came another shadow. Bigger, heavier, its eyes glowing brighter, its roar shaking the stones loose. From the ceiling, the first beast stumbled out of the cave, wounded but alive. The second beast stood in its place, larger, stronger, its claws like blades, its teeth sharper. It lowered its head, its eyes burning with hunger and fury. The human's grip tightened on the torch, his body aching, but he did not back down, the mother whispered in broken human speech, her voice trembling. Too big, too strong. You cannot fight. But the human only looked back at her for a moment, his eyes steady. Then he faced the monster, raising the torch high, his jaw set in silent defiance. The cave filled with the sound of the beast's growl, deeper, then thunder. The human stood ready, his heart pounding, his mind clear. He knew this fight was not just for survival. It was for them, for the mother, for the children. And he would not run. Not now, not ever. The beast stepped forward, its shadow swallowing the firelight. The children whimpered, the mother prayed. The human raised his weapon, and as the monster's roar shook the night, the cave became a battlefield. The final blow had not yet been struck, and the outcome was uncertain. The cave smelled of smoke and blood, the air heavy with the echo of roars now fading into silence. The human stood, his body trembling, his arm aching, his chest rising and falling with every sharp breath. The larger beast lay motionless at the cave mouth, its dark body burned and broken, its glowing eyes finally dim. For a long moment there was no sound, no movement, only the faint crackle of the dying fire. Then slowly the alien mother lifted her head, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected death. She had expected to lose everything. But instead, the human still stood, battered yet alive. The children peeked from behind her arms, their small eyes wide with wonder. They had seen monsters fall, not by the claws of their kind, not by the power of their clan, but by the hands of a lone human. To them, he no longer looked like a stranger. He looked like something more, something strong, something safe. The human staggered forward, his legs weak, his hand pressing against the wound on his side. Blood dripped between his fingers, but his eyes did not waver. His steps carried him back into the warmth of the firelight. The mother rose quickly, rushing to him, her hands trembling as she caught his arm, guiding him down to the ground. "You hurt," she whispered in broken words, her voice soft but filled with fear. She tore a strip of cloth from her own clothing, pressing it against his wound, her touch gentle but firm. The children crept closer, their small hands brushing his arm, their eyes filled with something he had not seen before. Trust. The human winced at the pain but did not pull away. For years he had carried his burdens alone, his wounds treated only by his own hands. But now, here in this cave, he was not alone. Someone cared if he lived. Someone cared if he breathed. The mother's tears dripped onto his skin as she whispered again. "No one ever protect me," she said, her voice shaking. "No one fight for us." Her words cut into him deeper than the wound, and for the first time he realized the weight she carried. She looked at him then, her eyes wet, her lips trembling as though afraid to speak. But her children spoke first. Their small voices soft, broken in their own tongue. One word came clear, one word that crossed the barrier of language. "Father." The human froze, his breath caught, his chest heavy with emotions he had buried long ago. The children pressed against him, their small arms wrapping around his tired body, their faces burying into his side. The mother lowered her head, her tears flowing freely. But she did not stop them. She let them call him by that name. For a long time he sat there in silence, the warmth of their fragile bodies against him. He had been a wanderer, a man with no place, no family, no reason to stay anywhere. But in that moment, he felt something new, something powerful. He felt needed. He felt wanted. He felt like he belonged. The fire burned low, but the cave felt warmer than ever. The mother finished binding his wound, her hands still trembling, her voice soft as she spoke. You save us. You fight. You stay. It was not a question. It was a truth, spoken with a quiet strength. The human met her eyes, and for the first time, he did not turn away. Her gaze was no longer filled only with fear. It carried hope, fragile but growing. He nodded slowly, his voice quiet, but steady. I will stay, he whispered. The mother's lips curved into the smallest smile, a smile that carried years of pain but also the spark of something new. The children laughed weakly, their small voices echoing softly in the cave. For the first time, the sound of joy filled the dark, breaking the weight of sorrow that had lived there too long. But outside, the night was not finished. The world beyond the cave had not forgotten them. In the distance, faint but growing louder, came the sound of drums, deep, rhythmic, echoing through the mountains. The mother froze, her face pale, her hands clutching the children tightly. Her voice trembled as she whispered the words the human had feared. My clan. The human's eyes narrowed, his body tense despite his pain. So this was not the end. The danger was not only beasts from the dark. It was her own people, the ones who had abandoned her, the ones who would kill her if they found her alive. The drums grew louder, the ground vibrating with their approach. The human rose slowly, his body aching but his spirit firm. He tightened the bandage on his side, picked up his weapon, and stood. Before the cave mouth he had chosen to stay, he had chosen to protect, and now his choice would be tested again. The mother's voice broke the silence, her words soft but filled with fear and hope. They come. They finish us, she whispered. Unless you fight. The human did not look back, his eyes fixed on the shadows outside. His jaw tightened, his hand gripped the weapon, and his voice was firm. Then I will fight. The night shook with the sound of drums, deep and steady, rolling through the mountains like thunder. The human stood at the mouth of the cave, his body weak from battle, his side wrapped in cloth, his hands tight around his weapon. Behind him, the alien mother held her children close, their small eyes wide with fear. The fire inside the cave burned low, casting long shadows across the stone walls. The children whimpered softly, but the mother whispered quiet words, trying to calm them. Her voice trembled, not from lack of love, but from the storm outside that was about to break upon them. The human's eyes narrowed as he saw movement in the distance, figures appearing against the dark sky, their shapes tall, strong, and armed. Torches flickered in their hands, their eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. The mother's face turned pale, her lips tight with fear. They come, she whispered. My clan, they find us now. Her voice shook, but her grip on her children grew tighter, as though her arms alone could keep them safe. The human looked back at her, his voice calm, though the weight of danger pressed heavy on him. They will not take you, he said. They will not harm the children. His words were simple, but they carried a strength that made her breath catch. The first warriors reached the cave, their steps heavy, their voices loud. One shouted in a deep tongue, his words sharp and angry. The mother understood, and her eyes filled with sorrow. They call me traitor, she whispered. They say I must die. The human stepped forward. Standing tall at the cave's edge, the warriors raised their weapons, snarling like beasts ready to strike. But the human did not move aside, his body a wall between them and the mother. In a loud voice, he shouted words they could not understand. His language was foreign to their ears, but his meaning was clear. He stood as protector, as shield, as husband and father, even if only in spirit. The warriors laughed, their voices echoing like cruel thunder. What was one man against many? What was one human against their blades? But when they looked at his eyes, they saw no fear, only fire. The largest warrior stepped forward, his weapon raised high. The mother gasped, clutching her children, tears streaming down her face, but the human did not back away. Instead, he raised his torch, the flame bright against the dark. The clash came. Like lightning, the warrior's blade swung down, but the human moved, his torch striking first. Flames licked across the warrior's face, his scream cutting through the night. The others roared in fury, charging forward, their weapons flashing in the firelight. The human fought with everything he had, his body battered but his will unbroken. Every strike was fueled by the cries of the children, every move by the tears of the mother. The battle raged at the cave mouth, fire against steel, flesh against stone. The human stumbled, blood dripping from fresh cuts, but he did not fall. He pressed on, shouting with each strike, his voice carrying through the night like a challenge to the stars. The mother watched, her heart breaking, her hands shaking as she whispered prayers. She saw in him something no warrior of her clan had ever shown. Not cruelty, not hunger for power, but courage, pure and unshakable. The children cried out, "Father!" Their voices weak but clear. The human heard them, and their words gave him strength. With one final surge, he drove the last warrior back, the fire pushing them into retreat. The clan staggered, shocked, their pride wounded, their fury burning. But none dared step closer, none dared challenge the human again. His body was broken, but his spirit towered over them like a mountain. Finally, the warriors turned, their leader snarling but retreating into the night. The sound of drums faded, swallowed by the wind, and once again, the cave was silent. The human dropped to one knee, his strength nearly gone. The mother rushed to him, catching him before he could fall. Her tears fell onto his face, her voice breaking with gratitude. "You fight for us," she whispered. "No one ever fight for us, only you." The children wrapped their arms around him, pressing their faces into his chest. Their voices trembled as they whispered the word again, the word that bound him to them, "Father." The human looked at them, his eyes heavy with pain but soft with something greater. For the first time in years, he felt no emptiness, no loneliness. He felt family. He felt purpose. He felt love. The mother pressed her forehead to his, her voice soft, filled with tears and hope. "You are ours now," she whispered. "Husband, father, protector." Her words were not broken now. They were strong. They were true. The human closed his eyes, his body weary, but his heart burning bright. He had come to this cave as a wanderer, a man with no home, but he had found more than shelter. He had found a family. And from that day the galaxy whispered of the human who became father in the darkest cave.